Yoriichi has continued to make every demon shit its pants at the mere sight of a red-haired person. But what if this nightmare comes to life? What if Yoriichi was transported to the Taisho era in all its glory? Will Muzan ever see this atrocity coming? Will Luffy ever find the One Piece? But, before we proceed, we've chosen the winner from the last video and we'll reveal him or her anywhere in the video. So watch carefully or you might miss your rightful prize. Let's begin. Yoriichi strides along with his stoic nature in the thick forest, donning a deep regret in his eyes, having met the Kamados for the very last time and holding their daughter in his arms had tapped into his memories and made him long for a normal life with his wife Uta and their unborn child. But as Yoriichi goes on, the weather suddenly turns turbulent. Looking up in the sky, Yoriichi notices a yellow cat which waves at him and asks him, "Just kidding." He notices a circular thundercloud and assumes that the gods aren't happy. Giving no more thought to them, he takes a few more steps. But as soon as he exits the forest, a red bolt of lightning strikes him from out of nowhere and knocks him unconscious. Yoriichi wakes up and realizes that he was unconscious throughout the day and had only regained consciousness in the night. He looks around and a spine-chilling thought crawls up his psyche as he concludes that he was carried over to a new place by someone while he was knocked out. Suddenly he overhears the deafening sound of trees falling nearby and wastes no time. He unsheaths his sword and rushes to the location. As soon as he arrives, he spots a wounded Sumiyoshi crawling on the ground, cornered by a white demon. With no hesitation, Yoriichi dashes towards the demon and cuts him into 1,000 pieces within the blink of an eye. He whips his sword and cleans the demon's blood and sheaths it while turning to see if Sumiyoshi is okay. However, as soon as he glances at his old friend's face, he's shocked. He realizes that the person he just saved was not Sumiyoshi, but rather a look-alike. That look-alike turns out to be none other than Tanjiro, the descendant of Sumiyoshi himself. Tanjiro rushes to untangle Nezuko and covers her up in order to protect her from the unknown man. Yoriichi once again grips his sword, but briefly spotting Tanjiro's Hanafuda earrings and the Demon Slayer uniform. Realizing that he's a member of the Corps, he questions Tanjiro about his connection with the demon. However, before Tanjiro could answer, Giyu arrived, jumping in between them and raising his sword towards Yoriichi. He asks, "Why the heck do you look more depressed than me?" "Oh no, that ain't right." He asks Yoriichi about his identity and why he's on the mountain against the wishes of Master Ubuyashiki. Yoriichi is startled to hear the name Ubuyashiki. However, he chooses to remain silent. This prompts Giyu to attack and subdue the rogue slayer. But as soon as Giyu moves forward, Yoriichi partially vanishes from Giyu's sight and hits him with the hilt of his sword, knocking him to the ground. His body loses its strength in an instant, and as he once again tries to get up from the ground to face his opponent, Yoriichi lauds him for his perseverance and knocks him out with a second blow. As he starts moving towards Tanjiro once again, he senses a small projectile coming for him from the back and dodges it without much effort. As he turns to determine the source of the knife, he spots the shadow of another swordsman up on the tree. The swordsman is revealed to be none other than Shinobu herself, and as soon as she jumps down to confront Yoriichi, he strikes her down in midair and slams her onto the floor like my Mitsuri body pillow. Oh, I gotta stop leaking my personal life details here. Anyways, as both the Hashiras get up and dash towards Yoriichi to attack him simultaneously, a Kasugai crow announces that all the survivors of Mount Natagumo have been summoned by the Oyakata-sama. Hearing this, everyone stops immediately and sheaths their swords as they follow the crow back to the base in utter silence. Yoriichi realizes the situation he's been thrown into, and as he reaches the headquarters, he bows before Kagaya as soon as he appears. The other Hashiras get confused. However, Yoriichi's aura makes them steer clear of him. Nonetheless, Obanai raises the question of Yoriichi's presence, and the other Hashiras chime in as well. Kagaya instructs everyone to stop and asks Yoriichi to rise. Kagaya greets him with a familiar tone and welcomes him to the future. Everyone is shocked upon hearing this. Yoriichi asks Kagaya the reason behind his familiarity, and he explains that he envisioned him through his foresight. However, he is still an anomaly in this world, and he cannot further predict what would happen to him. Kagaya introduces Yoriichi to the Hashiras as the man who developed the breathing techniques, and the first slayer to ever encounter Muzan. Everyone is flabbergasted, but Sanemi drives everyone's attention towards Tanjiro and Nezuko. Kagaya, however, deems that the situation has already been taken care of, as Urokodaki, Giyu, and Tanjiro have taken responsibility for Tanjiro's demon accomplice. Sanemi tries to reignite the argument. However, Yoriichi swiftly replies that he can see through his aggression, which clouds his warm heart, and that he should spread those feelings of warmth towards his juniors too, by keeping his faith in them. Kagaya declares that whatever the future may hold, the appearance of the progenitor of Bretts is sure to turn the tide in their favor. Tanjiro is dismissed, and in a more personal meeting, Yoriichi iterates his story of meeting Muzan and the secret of the Bretts and the Demon Slayer marks to the other Hashiras. However, he doesn't plan to sit idle and requests submission from Kagaya. Rengoku butts in and wholeheartedly offers the inspection of the Mugen Train incident, which happens to be under his jurisdiction. Kagaya approves the mission, but he insists Yorichi to take a few lower-ranked slayers with them, one of whom he knows. A few days pass and the Kamaboko squad recovers. They are sent to their next mission, and much to their surprise, they meet up with Yorichi himself. Stunned by the advancement in technology, Yorichi strolls around in the railway station, along with Tanjiro and Inosuke, as the duo acts completely aloof. However, as soon as the train arrives, Yorichi refuses to board it, claiming that the train is void of any demon presence. Suddenly, Yorichi rushes out of the door of the station in a jiffy, leaving the three behind in confusion. Tanjiro traces Yorichi through his smell and finds him outside confronting the slasher demon. Apparently, he had seen him through the forest and found him lurking around in search of prey. The demon takes a glance of Yorichi and freezes in fear as the cells in his body start going nuts due to seeing Yorichi. Yorichi goes towards his sword, and before the demon could even say a word, Yorichi dashes like a god, covered in the aura of the sun, decapitates him. The demon shrieks loudly due to the burn sustained at his neck after the decapitation, but the feelings soon turn to regret as the demon drifts into the afterlife. The Kamaboko squad once again insists on boarding the train, assuring Yorichi that it's just a modern transport vehicle. He clarifies that the train doesn't frighten him, rather the train wasn't the target they were after, as he already asked the conductor about the location of the Mugen train. However, he has a feeling that after slaying this demon, Muzan would react in a very unpredictable manner, as he'd do anything to steer clear of his way. Yorichi's bad omen comes true as suddenly a large boulder lands near the fore, and they avoid it by a hair by jumping away. The Kamaboko squad gets scattered, and even before the slasher demon fully turned to ash, Akaza appears out of the dust to correct the mistake Muzan made 500 years ago. He immediately attacks Tanjiro. However, Zenitsu uses the first form of thunder breathing and carries him away from Akaza. Akaza immediately shifts his attention towards Yorichi. However, Akaza senses something off about the swordsman as he takes a fighting stance. Muzan's cells once again start going into panic once they get a glimpse of Yorichi through Akaza's eyes. He asks Yorichi if he's a Hashira. However, Yorichi simply replies that he can find out for himself as he grips his katana. Akaza initiates technique development, and as he progresses to the compass needle, he is confused as Yorichi oozes strength, yet the compass needle cannot detect a speck of battle spirit from the swordsman. Akaza moves forward to attack Yorichi, nonetheless, as he's been ordered by Muzan to end both the red-haired swordsmen. Yorichi closes the distance as well, but before Akaza could land a single blow, Yorichi cuts off his arm. Akaza tries to regenerate his arm, but the burns on his wound due to the red sword regresses healing. Panic sets into Akaza's mind, and in an effort to back off, he plants his feet on the ground and propels backwards. Yorichi spots the haste in Akaza's movement, and before he could move too far from him, he takes in a deep breath, and with tremendous speed cuts off both his legs as well. Akaza tries to crawl away in desperation and exclaims, "What in the Saw movie series is this shit? I didn't sign up for this." Just kidding. Akaza once again tries his best to regenerate his arms, and after putting all his strength in his legs with much effort, he's able to regenerate his legs. However, as soon as he plants his feet to get up on his leg, Yorichi swiftly crosses over to his front and stares into his soul like a god of destruction. Even before a single thought of survival could cross Akaza's mind, Yorichi lops off his head. Tanjiro and the others watch in silence as Yorichi displays his superior skills and almost toys around with Akaza, the Upper Moon 3, while showing no signs of hatred or exertion. Akaza's cut-off head rolls towards Tanjiro. Noticing the warmth in the boy's eyes, he reminded of a figure from his past, his master. Akaza's head starts to disintegrate. However, Inosuke yells and warns Yorichi to look behind him. Heeding the warning, Yorichi turns behind and spots a headless Akaza, taking the stance to unleash destructive death. With concern over encountering the first demon ever after Muzan, who doesn't die after a beheading, Yorichi immediately combines all the forms of his breathing, and even before Akaza could unleash a single blow, he cuts his body into a million pieces, ending the enigma once and for all. Yorichi sheaths his sword and rushes towards the Kamaboko squad to see if they're hurt. As Yorichi helps Tanjiro up, Rengoku arrives at the spot following Shintaro, only to be humbled by learning what has occurred. Meanwhile, all of the demons are summoned to the Infinity Castle, where they witness a sight never seen before. The frown on Muzan's face was enough to send Kokushibo into a state of panic and confuse the other Upper Moons. Soon Muzan, with a stuttering voice and veins popping out of his head, announces that the Scarlet Swordsman he encountered centuries ago has reappeared, and that he cannot return to the surface until that threat is dealt with. Kokushibo rushes forward in a jiffy and unsheaths his voracious sword. He declares that destiny has provided him with an opportunity he thought impossible. He promises Muzan the head of his brother and instantly leaves the Infinity Castle. The other demons, shocked by Kokushibo's revelation, look towards Muzan. However, tired of explaining and reliving the horrifying memories, Muzan stares at the other demons, and through his cells in them, makes them go through the same hopelessness he once felt against Yorichi. All the demons' stomachs begin to hurl, and they get terrified to such an extent that even the cold cold-blooded Doma displays traces of fear within his colorful eyes. The lights in the Infinity Castle shut down as Muzan withdraws into one of its crevices and Nakime transports everyone back. Doma in his mansion is ecstatic, as for the first time in 2 centuries, he's felt a tiny shred of emotion. He vows to find and battle Yoriichi before Kokushibo can lay his hands on him. Thus he sets a foolish yet clever plan into action. Doma travels to a nearby town and starts slaughtering people right before everyone's eyes, against the wishes of Muzan using a makeshift ice sword. His plan works as a demon slayer spots him and dashes down to kill him. Doma plays with the slayer for a while, however as soon as the sun nears the horizon, he cuts down both arms of the demon slayer and escapes, taunting him to bring in the scarlet blade for him to devour. The message successfully reaches the headquarters through the Kasugai crows, and the situation is interpreted as an act of aggression against Yoriichi by Kagaya. Kagaya summons Yoriichi and informs him about the incident. Yoriichi, with a concerned look on his face and the partial information from the slayer that encountered the demon, derives that the demon is none other than Zoro, the king of hell himself. Bad joke, I know. Anyway, Yoriichi concludes that the demon who uses a sword could only be his brother, Michikatsu.